Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft lore video. Medivh is going to be extremely important. He has a history of spurring Azeroth's denizens on to greater adventure. Just look how he set Warcraft 3 in motion. And in a throwback to that almost, Khadgar, the new Guardian, was seen fulfilling a similar role in Legion. Well, in Legion, we then met Medivh, and what he said even has parallels to Sylvanas' Shadowlands monologue. He then leaves in a rush to deal with some sort of threat that we don't know about, and in a way that could intersect with Azshara's new post-Ny'alotha plan. Now, today's video is all about a powerful, a mysterious magician, that big old mix of foresight, sharp intellect, and extremely high-tier magic, and that is why you will love Overlord on today's sponsor, Crunchyroll. That's where you will get their massive catalog and anime from Japan 1 hour after broadcast, professionally subtitled, 1080p, and ad-free. And with your 14-day free trial at crunchyroll.com/Bellular, or just by clicking the link below, I recommend that you watch Overlord. The titular Overlord is the kind of player that we'd all like to be, extremely overpowered. Overlord is a very compelling show about our villainous protagonist who is vying for total domination of the world that his favorite MMO turned into. It's a pretty neat premise. It's got a great cast, strong MMO-inspired action that actually gets those things really right, and an excellently built world. And as it turns out, yes, taking over the world is about a little bit more than just OP spells and legendary items, but those things certainly help. It's animated as well by Madhouse. If you know Madhouse's stuff, it's gorgeous. It's a real visual treat. So thanks to Crunchyroll for sponsoring today's video. Get your 14-day free trial at crunchyroll.com/Bellular, or just click that link below and go watch Overlord. Thanks to them, and let's get into the video. So to start us off, while Medivh might just look like some guy, he's actually far more. I mean, here's what he said in Warcraft 3.
Human? I left my humanity behind long ago. I am something different now.
Now you might be wondering what that actually means, just what Medivh is. Well, Medivh was possessed by Sargeras via his mother Egwene. Now, before he was aware of all this, Medivh came to the conclusion that Azeroth was divided, and that it would be conquered by the Legion. He therefore decided to travel the cosmos, and that is where he found the orcs. Now, after the Legion discarded the orcs, he pretty much thought, well, it would be pretty good to use their axe puppets against them. Or so he thought, because this stuff was all subtly influenced by Sargeras, who was still within him, and over time, who would gain more control over him. Now, this led to a bunch of strange actions that made Khadgar very suspicious, and this eventually led to Khadgar and Lothar confronting and killing him. Now, when this happened, Sargeras was banished to the Twisting Nether, and then Medivh's pure soul was released. Did it go to the Shadowlands, as it probably should based on modern lore? No. According to Stormwind's historians, it went to the astral plane. According to Chronicle, it went beyond reality, so just, off in the spooky realm. Now, what we actually do know here is that his great power in that period let him glimpse through the Twisting Nether, and that is how he read demons' minds and found out about the next Legion invasion. And this is what led to him getting the whole gang together for Warcraft 3, and then after that was done, he said that his powers had waned, and then he left the physical realm. Now, Medivh remained just gone for quite some time indeed, and yes, we saw echoes of Medivh. We traveled back in time to meet past Medivh, but we didn't actually interact with Medivh himself until Legion's patch 7.1. That is a patch that revealed a lot, especially with the context of Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands. So in 7.1, Return to Karazhan, we find out that the Legion are invading Karazhan with the goal of using it as a second portal to all Legion worlds, one that would be even larger than the Tomb of Sargeras portal. Khadgar and ourselves head off to stop the Legion and prevent their plan from being successful, and right before the final boss, Medivh appeared to us. Now, this was the first time we had actually seen Medivh in over a decade. Now, Medivh told us that we must fight the Legion's commander while he shuts down their link to the other worlds. And with that, we then headed to Nether Space, which is where Karazhan is anchored to the Twisting Nether. That'll be important later. And we succeeded in our plan. And in the process, we likely did save Azeroth there. Now, it's after this fight that things get important, and here is the first thing that Medivh says.
Medivh, you would be a welcome ally in our war against the Legion.
Well, my path leads elsewhere. Besides, Azeroth has found her guardian in you, young trust.
So yes, he's on a different path. What about the Mantle of Guardian though? Well, here's how he explains that to Khadgar.
You have all the power you will ever need, Khadgar. It is your heart, your courage, that makes you this world's guardian. And a better one than I ever was.
And then what I find is interesting here is right when Khadgar's going to get all sentimental and nice, Medivh just cuts the crap, gets straight to it, and says this.
Enough sentiment. Hear these words before I depart. It may be simpler to shut a door than to pass through it, but sometimes a step into the unknown is required to break the bonds of fate. There is much that lies ahead for all of us. Farewell.
Now look, the significance of this line cannot be overstated, especially when we take it in full context of what later happened, and especially when we realize that the Legion expansion is where Blizzard really started to sow the seeds of so much future content in World of Warcraft. First, where did Medivh come from? Right, well, it's clear that he was just floating around the cosmos, watching out for things, doing stuff. At the end of War 3, his plan was basically to set Azeroth up such that we could handle ourselves. And over that next decade, he would have been vigilantly watching and, regaining his power. Now, he clearly chose to appear here, as this seemingly is where his powers were needed, but it's also clear that it was not his main priority. As you heard, he says that his path leads elsewhere, and that much lies ahead for all of them. Now, it couldn't be more clear that that means that something else is going on past the Legion, and, then with that, he just flies off into the Twisting Nether. I think that is a nod to the cosmic nature of whatever Medivh is on the lookout for. Remember, Medivh is one of the most powerful and wise beings in existence, actually to the point where, in the early days, Chris Metzen and co. considered him to be an Eternal. Now, that is the category of being that also includes, the demigods and the titans, stuff like that. And it's really darn telling that him, as this incredibly powerful guy, just didn't find the time to deal with the Legion, because clearly something more important was going on out there. First though, let's talk about how this scene could relate to Shadowlands, and then after that, we'll get on to what I think is the real big stuff. So, Shadowlands. His line about passing through a door instead of shutting it, that kind of references a few things. Now, most clearly, right, it does reference Vellyn's decision to hunt down Kil'jaeden and Illidan's to force the hand of fate regarding Argus. You see the lines being similar. And funny enough though, Medivh actually talks about breaking the bonds of fate, and that is quite literally something that Illidan does during the events of Argus, where he breaks those light bonds and, kills the prophecy he was a part of. So, is that stuff from Medivh all just foreshadowing Legion content? Well, it could be, but we've also got to remember that Medivh hinted at threats beyond the Legion, and he told us that his path leads elsewhere. Now, if we were to apply some of his lines to Shadowlands, then there are some similarities to what Sylvanas actually monologued about in the Shadowlands cinematic. So, Medivh talked about breaking the bonds of fate and stepping through a door into the unknown. Sylvanas says that the world is a prison and that, she's going to set us free. Free as in breaking the cycle of what should normally happen, and the way the world is set up, aka kind of fate. So, it's both characters talking about a changing up of the natural order, or at least a changing up of what is naturally happening to the natural order of things. Now, indeed, Medivh could probably enter the Shadowlands through the Twisting Nether portal. After all, the Rift of On in the Emerald Dream/Nightmare is tied to the Twisting Nether. That's how Archimonde got Nightmare Corruption at the end of WoD, and then Ardenweald is tied to the Emerald Dream. So you can kind of see a Shadowlands connection there, and I imagine they'll bring that up in the future. Plus, Medivh was a spirit, so we probably could have went there. Now, you really can see here, though, that Medivh was referencing events beyond Legion and off-world. It's not like we saw him during the battle for Azeroth and the Void Incursion. So, with all this context of him floating around as a spirit, Medivh, being involved in the Shadowlands could kind of make sense. It could be that, or it could be something far more grand. So, let's talk about what is happening beyond. Because there's another similarity here. Samdi told us that Icecrown Citadel is the anchor between reality and the Shadowlands. Well, we meet Medivh in a place that is described as being Karazhan's anchor to the Twisting Nether. Two big towers, seemingly built on places of ancient power, and both of them anchoring us to another realm of Warcraft's cosmology chart. And if you think about Blizzard's main goals with exploring that chart, I think this starts to make more sense. Now, with us knowing that Medivh was off to deal with greater threats, and seeing how Karazhan is connected to the Twisting Nether, and therefore pretty much all of the Great Dark and much of, well, everything out there, I think we can now do a lot of speculation. And I'm going to start that with Azshara. Why Azshara? Well, you see, we free Azshara from Zanesh, and this is what she says.
I tire of intermediaries and heralds. The true throne of power beckons, and I intend to claim it.
And with that, she then teleported away. Now, Azshara is not only one of the most powerful characters in Azeroth, she's also one of the most cosmically aware, and actually one of the older people too. I mean, in the distant past, she communicated with the Legion. She was clearly very aware of all the cosmic stuff that was going on, and since then, she will have had access to great knowledge. She seems to have been able to dupe the Void, to gain much of its knowledge, much of its power, and somehow not be corrupted by it, which if we think about it is very impressive. Based on all that, and then her exit from Ny'alotha, I think it makes little sense for her to be going to the Shadowlands just as a plotline. I think she's obviously off into the cosmos to, as she said, deal with those who N'Zoth heralds. Presumably, the Void Lords. Now, or the Void Gods, whatever. Who else is out there? Ny'alotha. When we last saw her, she walked through a void portal and said, like, we would meet again. And I somehow doubt Ny'alotha is going to be in Shadowlands. I mean, it's got plenty enough to cover on its own. Instead, I very much suspect that Ny'alotha is the perfect setup for a cosmic expansion. You know, being a powerful void entity that she is, likely a fifth old god that was a bit weaker, and one that seems to have a soft spot for us. And then there's more out there, right? There's the Ethereals, which have been teased a lot recently. There's Sinestra, aka Syntharia, who is out there in space, as was confirmed. That's Deathwing's consort, prime consort, as was confirmed via the Shaman Order Hall quest. And then there's what the developers have actually said, right? Steve's just said, yeah, we're exploring the cosmos. That's what we're doing. Now, you know, that's what they said is basically happening after Shadowlands. Technically speaking, I do believe they meant that in terms of exploring the Cosmic Forces chart, but I think you get the point there. We're going to do the Shadowlands, and then we're probably going to do a mix of the other ones. And just given how much is out there in space and what Medivh has been doing, I think clearly something is out there. And look, Medivh has always been a character who has spurred others to action, right? And that's in line with his belief that the Guardian is, in truth, the allied peoples of Azeroth. That's what his conclusion is with War 3. And just look at how, say, Khadgar arrived to Stormwind to herald the Legion expansion. I suspect Medivh will return and do similar in the near future, and he will reveal to us what his path was, and the great threat out there that maybe we don't know about, the one that is so great that he could not even help us fight the Legion because he had to go and deal with it. Which, if you think about it, is major in scale. And I mean, even more so because he also didn't feel the need to bother helping us with, like, N'Zoth. Now, as for what we deal with, I mean, the most simple reading is that it's the Void, right? Blizzard have set up a direct opposition to that force, both in us and then also in the Lightbound Draenei of Draenor, Alt Universe 1. So there could be that, though I actually suspect that the Light might be its own expansion, and that Yrel and Co. might be their own thing and their own expansion, like, aside from a Void thing. So there's that, but the one thing I would like to say here is that if Blizzard was to ever use a character to just come in and blow our minds with some new knowledge and just pull the rug out from under us, it would be Medivh. He would be the character you would use for that. The last we've actually heard of Medivh was after Legion. That's when Khadgar said he was returning to Karazhan. Now, Khadgar said that he hoped to confer with Medivh, and that perhaps the knowledge needed to heal the world lay in his ancient texts. Now, it's a bit of a strange statement, right? Because it almost seems that by saying, like, confer, Khadgar actually meant to confer with his knowledge and check in with his books. So that's a little bit strange, because seemingly, like, Medivh's off in the Void. Then Rathian visited Karazhan, right? And that's where he found out how to make that anti-corruption tonic that saved Ebonhorn. And when he was there, he talked with Medivh's lingering spirit. Now, is that a fragment of Medivh, like, left over to watch the place? I mean, personally, I'd say so, because when you see Medivh during the return to Karazhan, he's fully there. He's not a spirit. He's not a fragment. Then another strange thing is the state of Khadgar, because I mean, Rathian probably would have bumped into Khadgar in Karazhan if that's both where they were, or if that's where both of them were. So it's a bit odd there, considering the last lore location we have for Khadgar is Karazhan. Now, this is pure speculation here, but what if Medivh and Khadgar have been off on a quest? it would certainly explain Wrathion not seeing the actual Medivh, and Wrathion not meeting Khadgar, and Khadgar being completely AWOL. So what I would say here is the Chekhov gun has been placed on the mantelpiece. The existence of a mystery here is clear, and the pieces are clearly being moved into place. And I doubt this will pay off soon, but I am very sure that Blizzard will pay this off and that this will be key in a future bit of World of Warcraft content. So, there you go, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'd just love to know, what are your personal theories for Medivh? Let me know in those comments, and with that, I'll see you next time.